Welcome back to the shop. Today we are going to be building a door out of these 1x12 shelf boards. Now in the first video we actually took our raw material, ripped it, and glued it together to make the framing pieces that we need to actually start making this door. So let's get started. All of our glue is dried and I took all the clamps off our boards. You can see some nice indentions from the clamping there, and that's kind of expected, but we're going to plane that off. The next thing I want to do is remove one edge of the glue that squeezed out so that I can run these against the fence through the table saw and rip them down to their final width, which will be 4 inches wide for most of these parts and 8 inches wide for the bottom part. You could use a scraper like this to remove the glue, but it's actually pretty tough to do. And since I'm in a shop where I have a jointer, that's really the best and fastest tool to get this removed, so I'm going to use that. Now that my boards are ripped down to their final width, everything is looking beautiful. The edges are straight and square and clean. I love that. Now it's time to get the thickness made right. These are about 1.5 inches right now. That means we have about 1/16 to take off of each side to get rid of all of our clamp marks and glue and scuffs. So we're going to do that next. Look at that nice little hand plane shavings. I've always liked these. I don't know what it is about it. I just do. Well, my plane is very sharp too, by the way, and it makes a really nice sound when they're sharp. They just zip right through the wood. I'd love to pause for 30 minutes and talk about the satisfaction of using a hand plane, but we're going to move on. So everything we've done up to this point has been very basic, like woodworking 101, simply cutting and gluing things together. We're going to do some joinery now, which is going to be giving the door its strength to hold itself together. I've got a bunch of books on joinery around here in the shop. We're going to use a joint called the mortise and tenon, and you can make it with many different tools, even with a skill saw, if that's the only saw that you had, and a drill or a drill press. I'm going to be using, of course, the table saw and a mortising machine that is a little bit more advanced tool to make these joints, but you can make them with absolute basic hand tools. Before I can make my mortise and tenon joints, I need to know where they're going to go, and so I'm just marking the layout of where these horizontal pieces meet the vertical pieces, and then I can mark where I'm going to cut out a mortise, and we're going to plow a channel all the way down the length of the vertical boards with the table saw, and I'll show you how to get it perfectly centered every time with no thinking. At this point in the project, I think it's important to start labeling your parts so that you don't get confused. I have the top and the left and the right. I wrote them on there very softly with a pencil because I don't want to bear down and imprint that into the wood, but this will sand off really easily right now, so I'm not really going to do any sanding until all the cutting and assembling is done. The groove in all these pieces is going to end up being 1/2 inch wide, the same thickness as our panel, and about 5/8 of an inch deep. So I'm going to lower my blade down here till I get 5/8. I'm going to put 1 tooth top dead center here because that's where the maximum height will come out, and I kind of have to lean over a little bit. I think that's 5/8, and even if it's not perfect, that number is not absolutely critical. Now I'm going to start by centering the blade in a board, and I can literally just hold it right here and slide the fence until it's about in the center. Because I'm going to run a board through and then I'm going to spin it and run it the opposite direction, what that will do is self-center the groove in the board. And that groove will be too narrow, so then I'll just move the fence over a small amount and I'll pass it again and I'll flip it both ways, keeping the groove centered the entire time. As it gets wider, as I move the fence over, until I reach my maximum width of 1/2 inch. And when I think I've achieved it, I'll take my panel and I'll test fit it into the edge of this board to confirm that I got it right. Oh, I left a little fin there. I checked the fit of my panel here into the groove and it is just right. As a matter of fact, I probably cut this groove a little too wide. There's a tiny bit of play, but I'm not worried about a tiny bit of play. What I don't want is to have to force this panel to fit in here, and it would make everything difficult to assemble, and it also would maybe give you problems down the road. So a little bit of float in the panel is okay. If I could give my best advice, it would be to have an extra piece of wood that's the exact same thickness that you're going to make your door out of to use as a test scrap when you're ripping this groove, so that you can actually test on a piece that is not your real work piece, and if you mess it up, then it's okay. I'm going to be using a mortising machine, which I really love, and I bought just for making these kinds of joints. It uses a square chisel. This thing is really amazing. With a drill bit in the center, you press down really hard and it literally drills a square hole. That is fantastic. If you don't have one of those though, you can use a simple drill bit like this or like this in a drill press, or even free-handed with a handheld drill. It'll be a little bit more difficult and take a little bit more time, but it's totally possible and it would work just as fine. Always going to be some wood chips that get stuck in there. Make sure to get those out. Oh yeah, now we're getting cleaned out. I'm going to move my mortising machine to the center here, and I'm using these little support blocks like an outfeed table almost. I glued these up to be the exact same height as the base on the mortising machine. Now that all the mortises are cut, I am ready to move on to the next step. And I gotta say, the mortising was very easy because this wood is so soft It cuts like butter. What a great wood to use. All right, we need to make the end of this piece fit down into the mortise with the piece called the tenon, and we're gonna slide over to the table saw to start making that. Really quickly, before I go to the table saw, I realized I have to cut these pieces to their final length, which will include the length of the tenon. If I cut it the width in between, oh, it's too short. Don't forget to add the tenon. Well, that took a few minutes, I will say, to use the table saw with a regular blade to chew off all this material. There are certainly faster ways to do it, but this way is pretty much the most available way for anybody, and it works great. You just have to have a little bit of patience. And I gotta say, my favorite part is watching the tenon become revealed out of the end of this piece of wood. You can see I left a lot of kind of splintery little feathery pieces here because it would be extremely tedious to cut each and every 1/8 inch pass perfectly. So I prefer just to do it a little quicker and then use a chisel to scrape all these off. To make the chiseling process easy, I'm gonna clamp it down using a block of wood so that I don't press a nice little circle into the face of my board now, since we're already at our finished thickness. We're gonna do a little test fit here, which is highly recommended. All right. It fits pretty good, but it is a little too tight, and I have a gap right here, so the tenon is too long. I need to shave just a little bit off. It's really best to start out too tight and work your way to just right. I'm gonna try the other one and the other piece, and hey, it just happens to go in perfectly all the way. So I only have one that needs a minor adjustment. Here's our middle piece. You can see the tenon is symmetrical. It's cut back on both sides by the depth of the channel there. And that is all good, we'll say. The top piece, however, and I have it written top there if you can read that, I'm going to remove a part of the tenon, and this is called a haunched tenon. And it's because at the top of the door there would be a gap where this is cut through and through with the table saw. So this little nugget that's left right there is gonna fill that gap and also add a little bit more strength to this joint. I'm gonna test fit each tenon with its corresponding mortise. Here you can see I have them numbered. I'm gonna go ahead and drop it in. A little bit of a snug fit to the bottom. I'm gonna make sure I can tap it side to side to my 2 pencil lines. This one is not quite going far enough to reach this line, so I better take a little bit of material off of the tenon right here. I really love looking at the parts of these before they go together, especially the tenon here and the way that we glue these boards together. You can see the glue joint is right in the center of this tenon. So even this tiny part is made of 2 different pieces. It's extremely strong and stable. I would like to go ahead and test fit the entire door right now. This would be a great thing to do before you get glue on everything because, well, that's pretty stressful when you get it all put together with glue. and then it doesn't fit, you know? Ask me how I know that. I don't know. Let's see, piece number 1 goes there. All right, moment of truth. Will it balance there for a minute? That's good. That's good. Oh, yeah. Ha! Look at that. She fits. The test fit on the frame went great. Everything slid together. Keep in mind, I did test fit each individual piece before we tried the whole unit. All right. It's time now to slice off the extra length here. This piece was actually useful, this extra length, during the mortising process, and that's why I left it. But when it comes to gluing it together, I want it removed so that I might be able to pull a tape in a diagonal to the corners and check to see if this thing is square. I think it's official now. These are not just boards. This is a door, and I'm pretty happy about that. With it assembled, I can measure in between here and see what size the panel should be, making sure that I oversize the panel, of course, to fit about 1/2 inch extra on each side into the groove. Immediately after I cut this panel down to the correct size, I'm going to go ahead and sand this surface because it's really difficult to sand in place when you have this frame around it. You can't really get to the edges without sanding the edges of your frame and messing it up. Another tip here is that if you know what color you're going to stain or paint this thing, sometimes it's not a bad idea to go ahead and stain or clear coat the panel before it goes in. I've tested everything else for fit, and I guess I'd be a fool if I didn't do these panels as well. So let's drop them in. There we go. That went pretty nice. Let's see about this one. Good and not too tight of a fit. I don't really need to put that top board on because I can see that this sticks up about 1/2 inch from the shoulder here. And I know that that other part will cover it. We're gonna hit it with some glue now. I like to use one of these little metal brushes. They're really cheap. I don't even know what that's called, but I have a bunch of them. I'm gonna put glue down in each joint like that, a big old heavy squeeze of glue, and then just take the brush and swipe it around on all of the interior surfaces in there. And it'll run down into the bottom a little bit by the time I get all of these done, and I'll just take the brush and do that again. Notice I'm not putting any glue on the panels. These are going to be called floating panels. And the reason is because they need to be able to expand and contract a little bit. And they wouldn't do that if they had glue on them. It would bust your door. Oh yeah. It's time to throw some clamps on here. I've taken my sweet time, so it's time to get to it before the glue begins to set. Hopefully, due to the square cut ends of all of these pieces, the door is going to turn out square, okay? I hope so. Now we will check. And you can see I'm putting the clamps at the ends here, at the top and the bottom, so I'll have an easier time cleaning up the glue squeeze out. I'm going to put as few clamps actually across a glue joint as possible, maybe even none. That would be even smarter. Ooh, I've got to use long clamps. Eesh. or too long, but that's okay. I'm gonna put one top and one bottom here. And I can see I've got a little gap to pull tight in the middle. Something is a little bit tight, but it's moving. There we go. A little bit of squeeze out. And then I'm gonna come under the bottom. Oh, okay. Ooh, is that taller than my blocks? I bet it is. All right, here we go. Well, that about wraps up the video here on how to build this door. I had a great time. I hope you learned something and had fun too. I gotta say, it's very difficult for me to condense everything I wanna say into such a short time and to describe every way that I make every part of this. But we'll get into some more detail in some separate videos where we actually can break down certain topics and make a time and a place for them. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. So if you missed it, we had just got her. So let's, I got too wordy though. The first video, if you missed it, we built, and man, that was so fast and easy because I used the mortise and machine. Just don't touch it.